The alley stank of rotting fruit and desperation. Marcus Thornton's polished Italian shoes clicked against wet pavement as he cut through the narrow passage, a shortcut he'd taken 1,000 times. His phone buzzed incessantly. The board meeting started in 12 minutes. Investors waiting. Millions on the line. He barely glanced up from his screen. Then he saw him. A boy. Maybe 12. Shoulders hunched over a torn garbage bag, small hands sifting through discarded takeout containers with the careful precision of someone who'd done this before. Too many times before. The oversized brown coat swallowed his thin frame. Dirt streaked his face. But it wasn't the poverty that stopped Marcus cold. It was the eyes. Deep. Familiar. Haunted in a way that pierced through 15 years of carefully constructed walls. Marcus's phone slipped from his hand, clattering against concrete. The boy looked up. And in that fractured moment, suspended between one heartbeat and the next, Marcus saw her. Amara. The woman he'd loved. The woman who'd vanished without explanation, leaving only silence and a note that said "I'm sorry." The scar above the boy's left eyebrow. The exact curve of his jawline. The way his lips pressed together when concentrating. Marcus's knees buckled. His million-dollar empire, his carefully curated life, all of it crumbled into dust as one impossible question shattered his world. Is this my son? Like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is right now. We love seeing our global family tuning in. What would you have done if this happened to you? Tell us in the comments. 15 years earlier, Marcus Thornton had been nobody. A scholarship kid at State University with holes in his sneakers and dreams bigger than his empty wallet. He'd met Amara in the library, her in a yellow sundress, him drowning in business textbooks he couldn't afford to buy. She was an art student. Wild curls, paint-stained fingers, a laugh that made the world feel possible. They fell hard and fast, the kind of love that burns bright and reckless. Late nights in his cramped dorm room, planning futures they couldn't yet afford. She'd trace patterns on his chest and whisper, "One day, you're going to change the world, Marcus. I can feel it." Then, just as suddenly as she'd arrived, she disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a hastily scribbled note tucked under his door, "I'm sorry. Please don't look for me." He'd searched for months. Called her friends. Visited her old apartment. Nothing. It was as if Amara had been erased from existence. Eventually, heartbroken and desperate to escape the pain, Marcus threw himself into his work. Built his first startup at 23. Sold it at 26. Built another. And another. Money became his armor. Success, his distraction. Now, at 38, Marcus Thornton was worth $47 million. Penthouse overlooking the city. Cars he barely drove. A calendar filled with meetings and charity galas where he smiled for cameras and felt absolutely nothing. He'd buried Amara's memory so deep, he'd almost convinced himself she'd been a dream. Until today. Until a boy with her eyes looked up from a garbage bag and destroyed everything Marcus thought he knew about his life. Marcus couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The alley seemed to tilt sideways. The boy noticed him staring. Those eyes, Amara's eyes, widened with sudden wariness. He clutched a half-eaten sandwich tighter, backing away like a cornered animal expecting violence. "Wait," Marcus's voice cracked. He raised his hands, palms open. I won't hurt you." The boy froze, calculating. His gaze darted to the alley's exit, measuring distances, preparing to run. Survival instincts honed by experience. Marcus took one careful step forward. "What's your name?" Silence. The boy's jaw clenched. That stubborn set of his chin, God, that was Amara too. "I'm Marcus." He swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. Are you hungry? I can get you real food. A hot meal. I don't need your charity." The boy's voice was quiet but sharp, laced with wounded pride that cut Marcus to his core. 12 years old and already convinced the world had nothing good to offer. "It's not charity," Marcus said softly. "It's, please. Just let me buy you lunch. That's all." The boy studied him with unsettling intensity, as if trying to solve an equation. Finally, he spoke, "Why?" "Because you might be my son." Because I see the woman I loved in every angle of your face. Because if I let you walk away, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. Because, Marcus whispered, tears burning behind his eyes, you remind me of someone I used to know. The boy's expression flickered, something vulnerable and desperate breaking through his defenses for just a heartbeat. Then he nodded. One small, cautious nod that changed everything. The diner was 3 blocks away, a small worn place with cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. Marcus watched the boy devour pancakes like he hadn't eaten in days. Maybe he hadn't. Slow down, Marcus said gently, sliding a glass of orange juice across the table. It's not going anywhere. The boy paused mid-bite, embarrassment coloring his cheeks. He set down his fork, forced himself to chew slowly. That pride again, refusing to appear desperate even when he clearly was. What's your name? Marcus asked again, softer this time. A long silence. Then, Elijah. Elijah. Marcus tested the name silently, feeling something crack open in his chest. That's a good name. Strong. My mom gave it to me. Elijah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said it meant God is my strength. Marcus's heart stopped. Your mom. Is she dead? The word landed like a stone. Elijah stared at his plate, shoulders rigid. 6 months ago. Cancer. The diner blurred. Marcus gripped the edge of the table, fighting to stay present. Amara. Gone. All these years he'd imagined her out there somewhere, living a life he wasn't part of. But she'd been dying. And she'd never told him. I'm sorry, he managed. So sorry. Elijah shrugged, but his eyes glistened. She tried. Worked 3 jobs. But the hospital bills. He swallowed hard. After she died, I had nowhere to go. Foster care was bad. So I left. How long have you been on the streets? 4 months. Maybe 5. Elijah finally looked up, meeting Marcus's gaze with heartbreaking directness. Why do you care? You don't know me. But I think I do. I think you're mine. Marcus leaned forward. Did your mother ever? Did she ever mention your father? Something shifted in Elijah's expression. Fear. Anger. Pain. She said he was a good man who didn't know I existed. Elijah's voice hardened. She said she left to protect him. That he had dreams and she didn't want to trap him. The words hit like bullets. Marcus felt tears spill over, hot and unstoppable. Amara had been pregnant. She'd left to protect him. And he'd never known. Elijah, Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. Did your mother ever show you a picture? Did she tell you his name? The boy reached into his coat pocket with trembling fingers. Pulled out a crumpled, faded photograph. And Marcus's entire world exploded. It was them. Him and Amara. 22 years old, laughing in front of the library where they'd met. Her arms wrapped around his neck. His face buried in her hair. On the back, in Amara's handwriting, your father. Marcus Thornton. I loved him more than anything. Marcus couldn't speak. Couldn't think. The photograph trembled in his hands, evidence of everything he'd lost, everything he'd never known he had. You're him. Elijah's voice was hollow, stripped of emotion. You're Marcus Thornton. Yes. The word barely escaped. Elijah, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't. You're rich. Elijah stood abruptly, the chair scraping loud against linoleum. Other diners turned to stare. You're that Marcus Thornton. The one on billboards. The one with buildings named after him. Marcus reached across the table. Please sit down. Let me explain. Explain what? Elijah's voice cracked, years of abandonment erupting like a wound torn open. That you were too busy getting rich to care? My mom died in a county hospital because we couldn't afford treatment. She worked herself to death while you were, what? Buying sports cars. I didn't know. Marcus was on his feet now, desperate. Your mother left without telling me. I would have. Would have what? Married her. Elijah laughed bitterly, and the sound was devastating. She didn't want your pity. She saw the way you looked at your future, All those big plans, those ambitions. She knew a baby would ruin everything you wanted. That's not true. She died protecting your dreams. Elijah's voice rose to a shout, tears streaming down his face. She sacrificed everything so you could have this perfect life. And you did. You got everything, while we had nothing. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Marcus felt his legs weaken, the full weight of it crushing him. Amara had loved him so much she destroyed herself. Had chosen poverty and struggle and eventual death rather than burden him with responsibility. And he'd never known. Never fought for her. Never even tried hard enough to find her. Elijah, please, Marcus's voice broke completely. You're my son. Let me make this right. Let me. I don't need a father now. Elijah backed toward the door, his face a mask of pain and rage. I needed one 12 years ago. When Mom was working night shifts and I was scared of the dark. When kids at school laughed at my secondhand clothes. When she got sick and I had to watch her fade away, knowing we couldn't afford the medicine that might have saved her. He turned to leave. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing his arm. Don't. Please. Don't walk away. I've already lost too much. Elijah ripped free, eyes blazing. You lost nothing. You gained the whole world. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowded street, swallowed by the city. Marcus stood frozen in the diner doorway, his expensive suit feeling like a costume, his success suddenly hollow and meaningless. He'd found his son. And lost him in the same breath. Did you see that twist coming? Comment yes or no below. Marcus didn't go to the board meeting. He sat in his car for 3 hours, parked in that garbage-strewn alley, staring at the photograph until the sun dipped below the skyline. Amara smiled up at him from the faded paper, young, hopeful, alive. A ghost he'd failed twice. His phone exploded with messages. Investors furious. His assistant panicking. A multi-million-dollar deal collapsing in real time. He turned it off. What did any of it matter? The empire he'd built, the wealth he'd accumulated, it was all constructed on a foundation of ignorance. While he'd been chasing success, his son had been digging through trash to survive. While he'd been networking at galas, Amara had been dying in a hospital she couldn't afford. The truth was unbearable. He had chosen ambition over love. Not consciously, but through every decision he'd made after Amara left. He'd thrown himself into work, used business as an escape from grief. Never stopped long enough to truly search for her. Never questioned whether her disappearance meant something deeper. He'd been so focused on building a legacy, he'd abandoned the only legacy that actually mattered. Marcus pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and wept. Not the controlled tears of a man who'd learned to hide his emotions, but raw, broken sobs that shook his entire body. He cried for Amara, who'd loved him enough to sacrifice everything. For Elijah, who'd grown up fatherless because of choices neither of them made. For 12 years of birthdays he'd missed, scraped knees he hadn't bandaged, nightmares he hadn't soothed. For the man he'd become, successful, wealthy, and utterly alone. Night fell. The alley grew darker. Cold seeped through the car windows. Marcus looked at the photograph one more time. Amara's handwriting on the back. I loved him more than anything. Past tense. Because love hadn't been enough. Love hadn't paid for medicine, or kept their son fed, or prevented her from dying too young. But maybe, love could still mean something now. If he could find Elijah again. If his son would give him a chance he didn't deserve. Marcus started the car. He didn't know where to begin searching, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wouldn't stop until he brought his son home. Marcus spent 3 days searching. He hired private investigators, posted missing person alerts, walked every street in a 10-mile radius. His penthouse became a war room, maps covering the walls, photographs of homeless shelters and soup kitchens scattered across his desk. His business partners threatened lawsuits. He ignored them. Nothing else mattered. On the 4th morning, exhausted and desperate, Marcus found himself back at the library where he'd met Amara. He didn't know why he'd come, maybe hoping her ghost would guide him. He sat in their old corner, the one where she'd first smiled at him across a stack of art history books. That's when he saw it. A small notebook wedged between 2 shelves, nearly invisible. His hands shook as he pulled it free. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed. And on the first page, in Amara's unmistakable handwriting, "For Elijah. In case you ever need to find your way back to me." Marcus's breath caught. Inside were addresses. Safe places Amara had mapped out years ago: shelters, community centers, churches that offered meals. Places she'd known from experience. Places she'd survived. And at the bottom of the last page, the oak tree in Riverside Park. Our special place. Where Marcus once promised we'd build a future. Marcus remembered. Late spring, junior year. They'd carved their initials into that tree, dreaming out loud about a life together. He'd promised her everything under that canopy of leaves. He ran. Riverside Park was empty in the gray morning light. Marcus sprinted past joggers and dog walkers, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles, his breath ragged. The oak tree stood in the far corner, ancient and sprawling. And beneath it, curled against the trunk with his oversized coat pulled tight, was Elijah. The boy looked up, eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus dropped to his knees in the wet grass. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked, raw with emotion. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry your mother had to suffer alone. I'm sorry you've had to fight for everything when you deserve to be loved and protected and safe." Elijah's lip trembled. "I can't change the past," Marcus continued, tears streaming down his face. "I can't bring your mother back or give you the childhood you should have had. But I'm here now. And if you'll let me, if you'll give me the chance, I will spend every single day for the rest of my life being the father you deserved all along." Elijah stared at him, walls crumbling. "I don't want your money," he whispered. "I'm not offering money." Marcus reached out slowly, carefully. "I'm offering a home. A family. Me." Elijah's face crumpled. And then finally, he fell into Marcus's arms, 12 years of loneliness pouring out in desperate, broken sobs. Marcus held his son and promised the oak tree, promised Amara's memory, promised God or fate or whatever force had led him down that alley. I won't fail him again. The next 72 hours were a hurricane. Marcus called his lawyer at dawn. "I want to file for emergency custody. Today." "Mr. Thornton, the system doesn't work that fast." "Make it work." Marcus's voice carried a steel his assistant had never heard before. "He's my biological son. I have proof. Get the DNA test expedited. Whatever it costs." While lawyers scrambled, Marcus brought Elijah home. Not to the sterile penthouse, but to a quiet hotel suite with warm lighting and room service. He watched his son take his first real shower in months, bought him clothes that actually fit, sat beside him while he slept, afraid that if he looked away, Elijah might disappear like Amara had. The DNA results came back in 48 hours. 99.9% match. Father and son, confirmed by science what their hearts already knew. But the system had other plans. "There's a problem," Marcus's lawyer said over the phone, his tone grim. "Child Protective Services received an anonymous tip. They're claiming you're an unfit parent, that you abandoned your son, that you're only interested now because of guilt. They're sending a social worker to investigate. If it doesn't go well, Elijah goes into emergency foster care while the courts decide." Marcus's blood ran cold. "When?" "Tomorrow. 9 a.m. That night, Marcus sat with Elijah on the hotel balcony, the city lights spreading below them like fallen stars. "They might take you away from me," Marcus said quietly. "The system, they don't trust me yet. They think I'll hurt you." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Will you fight for me?" "With everything I have." "Mom used to say," Elijah's voice wavered. "She used to say you were the kind of man who kept his promises. Even when it was hard." Marcus turned to face his son fully. "She was right. I'm not perfect, Elijah. I'm going to make mistakes. But I will never give up on you. Never." The social worker arrived exactly at 9. Ms. Patricia Chun, sharp-eyed, skeptical, armed with a clipboard and years of seeing men make empty promises. She interviewed Elijah alone first. Marcus paced outside the room, his heart hammering against his ribs. Everything hinged on this moment. Not his wealth, not his reputation, just whether his son believed in him. 30 minutes later, the door opened. Ms. Chen's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Thornton." Elijah has something to say. Elijah stepped forward, standing taller than Marcus had ever seen him. I want to stay with my father. Ms. Chen studied them both. This isn't about what you want, young man. It's about what's safe. He is safe, Elijah's voice rang clear, no hesitation. My mom left because she loved him too much to trap him. But she was wrong. He wouldn't have run. And he's not running now. He looked at Marcus, eyes bright. He found me. He fought for me. That's more than anyone else has ever done. The room fell silent. Ms. Chen clicked her pen. Once. Twice. Then she wrote something on her clipboard. Temporary custody granted, she said finally. Pending further evaluation. Don't make me regret this, Mr. Thornton. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. I won't. I swear. But Elijah was already moving, crashing into Marcus's chest, holding on like he'd never let go. And Marcus held him back, whispering promises into his son's hair. Promises he would keep. This time, he would keep them all. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a mirror, adjusting Elijah's tie. You don't have to come if you don't want to, Marcus said softly. I'll understand. Elijah met his eyes in the reflection. I want to. She'd want me to. They drove to Evergreen Cemetery in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when two people have learned each other's rhythms. Marcus had spent these months learning everything, that Elijah loved science but hated math, that he had nightmares on Tuesdays, that he needed space when he was sad but presence when he was scared. Being a father, Marcus discovered, wasn't about money or grand gestures. It was about showing up. Every single day. The headstone was simple, elegant. Amara Elijah Williams. Beloved Mother. 1987 to 2024. Love is the greatest legacy. Marcus had purchased it with Elijah's input, nothing extravagant, just honest. They knelt together in the grass, and Marcus placed fresh sunflowers against the stone. Amara's favorite. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner, Marcus whispered to her memory. I'm sorry you carried this alone. But I promise you, I swear on everything I am, I'll take care of our son. I'll give him the life you dreamed of. The love you sacrificed for. Elijah placed his own flower down, tears sliding quietly down his cheeks. I told him about you, Mom. About how strong you were. How you never complained, even when it hurt. His voice cracked. He's a good dad. You were right about him. They sat in silence, 3 souls connected across the boundary between life and death. Eventually, Elijah spoke. What happens now? Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders. Now? We go home. We have dinner, you're cooking tonight, remember? Then homework, then maybe we watch that documentary you wanted to see. That's it. That's everything. Marcus pulled him closer. The small moments, Elijah. That's what family is. Not the big dramatic rescues, but the ordinary days we choose to show up for each other. As they walked back to the car, Elijah slipped his hand into Marcus's. A simple gesture that meant everything. Marcus had spent 15 years chasing success, building an empire, climbing mountains that ultimately meant nothing. He'd been a millionaire, a mogul, a man the world called powerful. But here, holding his son's hand in a cemetery where the woman they both loved rested, Marcus finally understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't found in bank accounts or boardrooms. It was found in second chances. In forgiveness. In a boy who'd had every reason to hate him but chose love instead. Marcus looked back once more at Amara's grave, the sunflowers bright against gray stone. Thank you, he thought. Thank you for giving me him. And somewhere in whatever lay beyond, he hoped she could feel it, the promise kept, the love redeemed, the family finally whole. If this story touched you, like and subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. This story reminds us that it's never too late to become the person someone needed you to be. That real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to love when we've already lost everything. Marcus and Elijah's journey shows us that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about honoring it by building a better future. What did you think of this story? Have you ever gotten a second chance you didn't deserve? Share your thoughts below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, Hold your loved ones a little tighter.